Hi everyone, we're going to go through our Flip Collaborate for assignment 3B, which is our folio. It's our final assignment in EDU 1002. So here's our agenda. We're going to look at the assignment overview, the rubric expectations, we're going to look at the learning plans, referencing, and then go through a little bit of other information. So if you have a look at the assignment overview, in your folio you're going to be able to demonstrate an understanding of key concepts with regard to language and literacy in Australian education context, particularly the role of ICT in language and literacy development. You'll need to be able to demonstrate appropriate communication skills, and you're also going to be able to identify the implications of culture and home languages for learning and teaching. Let's have a look at the rubric requirements. So this is a holistic rubric. So that means that you need to fulfill the requirements in each of the grade allocation before you can move to the next. So it's like a building block. Each builds on one another. So the first one would be your pass, then you move to your credit, distinction and higher distinction. So let's have a look at our pass descriptor. So what's happened here is I have highlighted in red the things that are essential. So you need to be able to make sure that you have done these things in order to pass. So you need to make sure that you have an introduction. You need to show what's going to be done during the activity and how the activity will be concluded. That's really important for both of your lesson plans. You need to identify the focus concepts and make sure that you have described each of the focus concepts in each of your learning plan. Your learning plans need to show, one needs to show definitely relating to ICT and the other one relating to home language and culture. But you also need to show that it's supporting language and literacy learning. So please don't go off and do a maths lesson or a HASS lesson or a science lesson. You need to be showing that you are supporting language and literacy learning in your lesson plans. You need to make sure that the activities and resources and props selected are age appropriate in the context of Australian early childhood education and the age group. You need to make sure that you've made an attempt to align with the EYLF or the Australian curriculum or your state's curriculum, depending on what age group you choose. You need to make sure that you've made an attempt at APA referencing and that your writing is generally free from spelling and grammatical errors. As we move up to the credit descriptor, so you need to ensure that you have done all of those things in the past descriptor, but then you need to show that you're reflecting a strength-based approach. You need to show that the choices in the learn activity plans enhance learning and they are meaningful, not just tokenistic. And this is really important in your EALD lesson plan, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. You need to show that you are accessing and using the readings and additional literature sources have been cited and referenced using mostly correct APA conventions, and you need to make sure your word count has been adhered to. And here you go, you're going to move up to your distinction descriptor here, and there is just a little bit more that we're building on so that you are showing a really thorough understanding as you move to the distinction descriptor. And that's the same for the high distinction descriptor as well. So you can go through those and just make sure that you have really thoroughly done the things in red and that you're showing a really thorough understanding of your lesson plans when you complete them in your assignment. So let's have an in detail look at our learning plans. So let's have an overview of our learning plans. Now for this assignment, you're going to design 2 learning activity plans to demonstrate your understanding of the usage of ICT and the implications of culture and home language for literacy learning and teaching in early childhood education. So this is students from birth to 8-year-olds in both early childhood and primary settings. The targeted readers for the folios are teachers at early childhood centres or primary schools. So imagine that you are sharing your ideas or resources of teaching with your peers. So I always say that it's great to imagine that you have a relief teacher coming in, and a relief teacher would be able to pick up your learning activity plan and be able to teach from that. So you need to ensure that you have enough detail in that so that you are being thorough in what you want to get through in your learning activity plans. And you need to ensure that you have included APA style and in-text with your in-text citations and a corresponding reference list. So we're going to go through this a little bit more in depth. The first past descriptor you would have noticed talks about making sure that you have an introduction, a body, and you need to make sure that you have a conclusion as well. Please note you can use bullet points and images in your learning activity plan, just to ensure that you are referencing them correctly. So in our introduction, this is where you gather your children together. You might have a brief activity that tunes them into the main activity. So you might do a story, use a photo, have a little song, but just make sure that that is going to be an introduction to what you're going to be doing in your body. So this is where you are going to, this is the main focus of your lesson plan. You're going to show what ideas you're going to be teaching in this lesson plan and where your ideas are developed. So make sure that the children are able to explore these concepts in various ways. So we're not just looking for worksheets to be completed. Have a think about play-based activities, group activities, the different ways that students will be able to learn in a early childhood context. So make sure that you are integrating all four components simultaneously. Try to incorporate an activity that will encourage children to talk rather than focusing on developing skills in isolation. And with your conclusion, now remember, conclusion is a point in the lesson where we encourage students to reflect on the lesson and recap key concepts. So this is where you would go over what you've learned in the body of the lesson. You might have some of your students share what they have learnt, but make sure that you're focused in on that conclusion and you're really clear in what you are getting the students to do, not just saying we're going to go out and wash our hands or children share what they have learnt. You need to be a bit more specific and show what questions that you're going to be asking the students to show that they have actually learnt something. So just make sure that you are very precise in what you are summing up in your conclusion. That's really important. And the great thing about this learning plans is that you can take on the feedback that you received in your first assignment and make sure that you are incorporating the things that you may have missed in that first assignment in your learning plans for this final assignment in this unit. So learning plan 1, this learning plan will be for teaching and learning a language or literacy using ICT, and you may select either of the following age groups: a preschooler from 3 to 5-year-old or a junior years primary school age from 5 to 8-year-old. So this is foundation to year 2. So ICT, there is your fantastic definition here. It refers to information and communication technology. In the 21st century, ICT is playing an increasingly important role in our life, work and education. Within our multiliteracies approach, ICT literacy can be regarded as another essential form of literacy. And we'll be seeing that as we go into classrooms and just in our everyday life, that we see the big impact that ICT has on our lives. So there's a lot of information in this slide and I'm not going to read through it all, but here's an example of an app called Puppet Pals that you would like to have a look at in order to develop your own lesson plan in regards to using ICT. There is so much out there in regards to different apps, different programs that you can use when you are looking at teaching language and literacy. Just make sure that you have got the focus on language and literacy and you're really specific in what the app or what the ICT is going to do and how it's going to help the students learn. Don't just say you're going to use an app. Why are you using it? What does the app do? How is it going to improve children's language and literacy? So just make sure you're really clear in your ICT example, and in fact in all of your examples, really specific. That's really the key in order to do a really good job with these learning plans. So learning plan 2, this is where we're going to be looking at supporting children's home language and culture, and you may either select one of the following age groups, so a preschooler or a junior years primary school age. Now you can do different year groups. So if you maybe selected a preschooler in your first learning plan, then you can do a junior years primary school age student in your second learning plan, or you can choose the same for both your learning plans. It's entirely up to you. But I would recommend, if you are doing a primary school course, then I would get you to have a go at doing a junior year's primary school learning plan just so you've got a little bit of experience before you go out on your prac. And same for your early years. If you're doing your early years degree, then just make sure that you are doing a learning plan which covers students who are 3 to 5 years old. So when we're talking about these type of learners, we're talking about EAL or EALD learners. So these are students who require additional support to assist them to develop proficiency in English. They come from diverse multilingual backgrounds and may include overseas or Australian-born students whose first language is other than English, or it may include Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students. So that's your dialect students. So they may speak Creoles or Indigenous language. And there's a great little link down the bottom there that you could have a look at in regards to getting some more information in regards to those types of learners. And here is an example of what you may look at for EALD learning students. So you may use a particular book. So you might look at whoever you are, or you might look at how the kangaroos got their tails, and you might look at how you would link that and make a learning plan in regards to using that type of literature in your classroom. Let's have a quick look at our curriculum connections. So you will either use your EYLF. Now remember, you are looking at the learning outcomes. So we're not just looking at you just putting one learning outcome in there. We're looking at you putting the learning outcome in there, but also describing it, how it identifies back to your learning plan. So if you are doing a learning plan that's going to cover children are confident and involved learners, what in your lesson plan shows that you are doing this? So make sure that you can link it back to your learning plan. There's also sub-outcomes in the EYLF, so if you wanted to have a go at using those, you can in this assignment. But just make sure that your connections are clear. Make sure that you're not just popping one learning outcome there. You're actually describing how it links back to your lesson. And here's your curriculum connection. So you'll be looking at foundation to year 2, and typically students from 5 to 8 years old. So these are typically, students from 5 to 8 years old. So you're going to be looking at language, literacy and literature, and you'd have a look in the Australian curriculum in order to find some content descriptors to link up to your learning plan. Again, make sure that you are clear in the connections that you're making. You're not just putting in the content descriptor, you are definitely putting in how it connects to your learning plans. That's really important. And again, if you wanted to use your state curriculum, you can in this assignment. With our referencing, you need to make sure that you are using your APA referencing style, and no doubt you've been getting some great feedback from your ELAs as you've moved through this unit in regards to some of the little things that you can tweak. So make sure you are providing one reference list at the end of your lesson plans, and make sure it's a reference list and it's not a bibliography. Okay, so just make sure that you are including all your references that you've used within your learning plan in your reference list, and make sure that your reference list does have those citations that you've used in your learning plans, and you're not just putting anything in your reference list. You need to make sure that you are citing correctly and you're including those in your reference list. That's really important, and just make sure that it is one reference list at the end. Here's a little bit of other information that's really important. You'll prepare your follow with one Microsoft Word document, and you will use the templates that are provided. Now, these are all in the Padlet, and they're also in the assessment document as well. So just make sure you use those. Don't go and make your own. That's not what we want. We want you to be using the templates there. Ensure you have read all the documents correctly. Ensure you've gone through the Padlet and you know what you need to be doing. You're ticking off those descriptors in regards to the rubric, so that you are ensuring that you're going to do really well in this assignment. And make sure that if you do use pictures or photos, that you can submit as a PDF, because sometimes they do move around a little bit. So that's just something to keep in mind. Finally, extensions really need to be avoided for this assignment. We've got a really quick turnaround of 10 days to get all your assignments marked. So just make sure that you're really on board with this, you're getting organised, and that you don't ask for an extension unless you really, really need one. Remember, if you do ask for a long extension, that we will be asking for evidence to support that claim. And remember that if you do ask for a long extension, that this may delay your results being released, which may affect your enrolment for next teaching period. So I'd really recommend that you get organised and get onto this as quickly as you can. So we've got our live collaborate sessions coming up, and we're going to go through some exemplars in detail, and we're going to answer any questions you may have at those live collaborate sessions. So we really look forward to seeing you there, and we wish you all the very best with this assignment. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you later. Bye.